Welcome back to PJGH Education. My name is Stephen, and today we're continuing our series on the Acts of the Apostles. This is Acts chapter 20, verses 1 to 16, episode number 34, and the title is Encouragement. Paul was at Ephesus, and there was a riot there. After the uproar ceased, Paul sent for the disciples at Ephesus, and after encouraging them, he said farewell and departed for Macedonia, where there's a cluster of churches there, Philippi, Berea, Thessalonica. When he had gone through those regions and had given them much encouragement, he came to Greece, where there's the church in Corinth. There he spent 3 months. He wintered there basically, and when the plot was made against him by the Jews, as usual, as he was about to set sail for Syria, that is to go back to Jerusalem, he decided to return through Macedonia. Now, the word that we want to focus on right here is the Greek word parakaleo, which appears several times in this passage. Parakaleo means to encourage, to comfort, and so we're looking at the parakaleo or the encouragement or the comforting ministry of Paul. So if you look at the first sentence, after the uproar ceased, what was that uproar? Because of Paul, he could have died from that event. Paul sent for the disciples, and after encouraging them, that is where the parakaleo word came. He encouraged the Ephesians. Now, if you think about it, right, Paul was the one who's in trouble. There was an uproar, and he could have died from that particular event. Now he's leaving Ephesus for Macedonia, and he's going to make his journey back to Jerusalem. Now he knew that there's going to be more trouble at Jerusalem. Now you would have thought that it would be the other way around, that the disciples at Ephesus would encourage Paul. You know how when some people leave our church for overseas and for travels, and we would like to encourage them, isn't it? To before they depart, to tell them that to continue to be faithful to the Lord, to be steadfast in the faith. But right here we have it the other way around. Paul was the one who's encouraging the believers. This is the encouraging ministry of Paul. And then he encouraged the Macedonians. When he gone through those regions at Macedonia, at Philippi, at Berea, Thessalonica, and he had given them much encouragement. So there's an emphasis there, much encouragement, much parakaleo. And he came to Greece, and there at Greece, at Corinth, he spent 3 months of winter there. We know that 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 1 to 9, Romans chapter 15, verse 22 to 29. Romans was written from Corinth, and Romans 15 says that he's on the way to Jerusalem once the winter is over. And there was a plot, as usual, made against him by the Jews as he was about to set sail for Syria. So he decided to return through Macedonia. He brought a group of people. Sopater, the Berean, son of Pyrrhus, accompanied him. That is basically someone from Macedonia, and another group of Macedonians, of the Thessalonians, Aristarchus and Secundus. And we have Gaius of Derbe and Timothy. And from Asia, we have Tychicus and Trophimus. So we were over here at Macedonia. Why was there so many people with him? Because Paul collected money from these churches at Macedonia, Achaia, Asia, beyond, and he was bringing this money back to Jerusalem, and he's bringing along witnesses from these various places that he went to collect the money. Now, why did he collect the money to bring to Jerusalem? On the other hand, it is of course to remember the poor, and that is exactly what Paul wanted to do. But on the other hand, he also wanted to establish the legitimacy of the churches that he established, these Gentile majority churches. If the church in Jerusalem, led by James, the brother of Jesus, would accept this gift from these Gentile churches, that would establish fellowship and recognition from the church in Jerusalem. And that is why it was a dangerous mission. So he brought these brothers along because they, as witnesses, they were sent by their home churches for accountability purposes. So these went on ahead and were waiting for us at Troas. What does this mean? This means that there's two groups of people right here. There is the first group, there is Paul and Sopater, Aristarchus, Secundus, Gaius, Timothy, Tychicus, Trophimus. This group of people went on ahead together with Paul to Troas, and there is a second group, the we, right, waiting for us at Troas, but we sailed away from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread, that is in April, and in 5 days we came to them at Troas, where we stayed for 7 days. So this is a strong evidence in my mind that the author himself was involved in these travels. It is not just some kind of a literary device, because the group was divided into two groups. There was one group that went on ahead with Paul, and there was another group that comes later, and it is this, and the author himself, Luke, was in this second group. But nonetheless, they reunited at Troas. On the first day of the week, when we gathered together to break bread, Paul talked with them, intending to depart on the next day, and he prolonged his speech until midnight. Now, the first day of the week is, of course, after Sabbath, but it is hard to know whether this was the Jewish week or the Roman week. So if it is the Jewish week, then we're talking about Saturday evening. If we're talking about Roman week, then this would be Sunday evening. But they were gathered together to break bread. Probably it means to have a common meal together, but I think that would also involve the Holy Communion, because the Holy Communion at that time was observed in the context of the common meal in the evening. And Paul talked with them, intending to depart on the next day. So he knew that he's leaving the next day. So what did he do? What does he do? He prolonged his speech until midnight. He shared with the disciples at Troas. You can really see the burden he has for the saints. And there were many lamps in the upper room where we were gathered. So when there is many lamps in the upper room, then it's a bit drowsy. It causes drowsiness. And a young man named Eutychus was sitting at the window, sank into deep sleep as Paul talked still longer. Eutychus means lucky, so unlucky for him, he fell off the window, isn't it? But luckily for him, he was taken up alive. So his name means lucky. Was he a slave? That is hard to know. Probably he was. He fell asleep while sitting at the window. He fell out the third story, that is second floor window, and was taken up dead. So basically back then there wasn't the ground floor, first floor, and second floor, but there was the first story, second story, and third story. So basically it's the second floor window, and he was taken up dead. But Paul went down and bent over him, and taking him in his arms said, "Do not be alarmed, for his life is in him." And this is reminiscent of Peter, isn't it? In Acts chapter 9, verse 36 to 41, about the raising of Dorcas, again to show the apostolicity of Paul's ministry. And when he had gone up and had broken bread and eaten, he conversed with them a long while until daybreak, and so departed. And they took the youth away alive, and were not a little comforted, which is another way to say very much comforted, encouraged, parakaleo. And then we have it, the parakaleo ministry of Paul, encouraging people all the time, comforting people all the time, despite the difficulties that he himself went through, despite the difficult challenges that he knew was ahead of him. Yet he could, in the spirit, encourage people. And that is really something for us today, that we too want to be in the ministry of encouragement, to encourage people to remain faithful to Christ, to encourage people in their lives, to bring wholesomeness to people's lives, and to entrust our own to God. But going ahead to the ship, we set sail for Assos. Well, now we're going to be traveling through the western coast of Asia, intending to take Paul aboard there, for so he had arranged, intending himself to go by land. And when we met him at Assos, we took him on board and went to Mytilene. And sailing from there, we came the following day opposite Chios. The next day we touched at Samos, and the day after that we went to Miletus. For Paul had decided to sail past Ephesus so that he might not have to spend time in Asia, for he was hastening to be at Jerusalem, if possible, on the day of Pentecost. So notice the kind of detail that we have right here. From Assos, why we set sail for Assos. Because Paul wanted to go by land, and then we basically met up there, and we went to Mytilene after that, and then to Chios, to Samos, to Miletus, along the western coast of Asia. Now, what this tells us is that this has the ring of authenticity, the ring of someone's diary, of someone's travel logs, has a first-hand account of this event. So this is yet another data point to show us that the author himself was involved in these travels, and he remembers it vividly. He had probably kept a diary, and so we have a lot of confidence that Luke indeed was the author of the Acts of the Apostles, and he spent some time together with Paul in ministry. But nonetheless, Paul wanted to sail past Ephesus. He went to Miletus, and next episode we are going to have Paul's ministry to the Ephesians, his final farewell address to the Ephesians at Miletus before he continued to sail on to Jerusalem, hopefully to arrive there on the day of Pentecost. So there we have it, episode number 34, Acts chapter 20, verses 1 to 16, the ministry of encouragement, parakaleo. I'll see you in the next episode. God bless.